Have you ever dreamed of owning a little cabin in the woods, a little weekend getaway spot? Well, my husband and I did, and we built ours near Akima Mountain in Ludlow, Vermont. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how we came up with this idea, what the process was, and share with you what the cabin looked like during construction and what it looks like now, and some things that you should know and some bumps we encountered along the way. I'm Jane. I'm a realtor in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and this channel is all about living in Metro West, Massachusetts. But if you're thinking about buying real estate anywhere in New England, give me a call as I can help. So why did we want to build this cottage? Actually, my husband has been talking about building a log cabin in Vermont since the day I met him, which was back in the 80s. And now our kids are grown and gone. We have a little more leisure time. And my husband is a general contractor and builder. So this is a little easier for us to entertain the idea than the average person. And we wanted to build something we could get away for a weekend ski house in Vermont and ultimately build a log cabin, which hasn't happened quite yet, and build something small and easy to maintain. So our first vision was to build a little 2-bedroom guest house. And then the second phase would be to build a log cabin. And he literally wants to pick up the logs and put them on top of each other. So he thought it made sense to build this little guest house. And so he could stay there while he was working on the actual cabin. So the plan was to use it for weekends, to go up with his buddies, to go skiing, and he wanted to repurpose and upcycle as many materials as he could from his jobs as a builder in Greater Boston. So we were building it on the cheap. So what were the processes? So what did we do first? Well, like any buyer going to a new area, I knew the first thing I had to do was find a great realtor who was a local expert. So I have another realtor friend that I've worked with in the past, and she did not cover this area. So I called Realtor A for Realtor B, and we got a fantastic realtor who's worked in Ludlow, Vermont for years, and she was a great help. So we found an amazing piece of land, which is about 3 acres. It has long-range views of Akima Mountain, so we're about 5 minutes outside of downtown Ludlow. That was important to me because I wanted to be able to get to a grocery store and restaurants and a drugstore, and I didn't want to be too far out in the country. And we found this land for $30,000, which honestly, you couldn't do that now post-COVID, but this was in the very early stages of COVID when we started searching. So land was a little more affordable then. So that's something to think about too. You can't really finance land, so we had to pay cash. So fortunately, we had savings and were able to buy the land with cash. And then we basically decided we were just going to pay as we went and reuse as many materials as we could. And my husband was going to do as much of the labor as he could as well. So we closed on this land in February of 2021. And the first year we spent on getting the infrastructure done. We had to put in a 350-foot driveway, a well, a septic system. We had to get electrical lines run. Eventually we got Wi-Fi connected. So it took us 12 months because we were doing this as side weekends and whenever Dave could get up there. But if you were hitting it full time between concept to getting it in, you could probably do that in about 6 months, I would say. So for an average person to contemplate design for something like this, you might hire an architect. But Dave and I literally drew this out on a piece of paper and tried to make it as compact as possible because we were working off a small footprint. And again, we were trying to make use of as many upcycled materials as we could. So we were able to keep a tight budget on the frame with recycling windows, framing materials, kitchen cabinets, and appliances. So if you were doing this on your own, you could actually get this planning phase done at the same time that the infrastructure was getting installed. So that's something that would be a time saver. But again, we are more about saving our pennies than doing this quickly. So the framing took us from about April of 2022 for about a little over a year. So it took us that long, and you might be able to do this phase in 6 to 9 months. So part of the reason it took us a little longer than we planned was some hiccups, unexpected events that one always has to assume they're going to hit in construction. But here's what happened to us. Last summer, Dave was up in Vermont. He was going to meet the plumber who was going to connect all the plumbing, and the house was going to be ready for occupancy in a pretty rough fashion. And since I had refused to stay there until the toilet was hooked up, whenever I'd gone up, I'd been staying in a hotel. And there was a major flood event in the summer of Vermont. It was not a hurricane. It was kind of a no-name storm, but Ludlow was hit badly. The downtown flooded. There are restaurants that have not come back yet, and that's 6 months. And the grocery store had has been just doing pickup and has been closed since July. It's not going to reopen until July. So our house was fine, but on this very long driveway, we had a culvert pipe that could not handle the water flow and broke. So there was a parting like the Red Sea in our driveway. So it was a major project to get the excavator back out, and we replaced it with a much larger pipe. So we are now prepared for those 100-year storms that we now seem to be getting every 10 years. So that set us back an additional 30 grand. So ouch. Another hiccup, wasn't really a hiccup, but was more of like an evolution, was my husband was up there with his buddy and they were doing some work on the house. And he said, if this is really like a ski house for the guys to come up, Jane's not coming up that often. I do work weekends. He said, why don't you think about maybe when you build a log cabin, that can be more like a bunkhouse / game house, like vaulted ceiling, lower finishes, pool table, hot tub, sauna, and another bath and another bedroom. And Dave and I decided that was the right attitude, and that what we should do is upgrade the existing little guest house, because that was going to be the only kitchen and the more major bathroom. So we ended up doing slightly nicer countertops and a much nicer bathroom. We ended up doing tile instead of having an acrylic surround. And another thing that wasn't really a hiccup, but it impacted our timing, was Dave was using his subcontractors that he knows, likes, and trusts from Massachusetts. So we were at the whim of their availability to travel up to Vermont. So we actually had framers, electrician, plumber, painters, and he did as much as he could himself. So he did install and stain hardwood floors himself. So we did the insulation ourselves, which you'll see. So we are absolutely thrilled with how this little cottage turned out. So some things to take away if you're thinking of a similar project is we took our time, but you could do it faster. The do-it-yourself route worked great for us, as my husband had the skill set and the physical strength and time to do some of this work. He had those subcontractors to go up there and help us get it finished. So it's also something that if you were going to build, I would guesstimate that you should plan on about 300 a square foot for your cottage. And plus the land. So one of the things that we're thinking about doing is renting this out a couple weeks a year just to cover our operation costs. So maybe like during Christmas break and February school vacation, when the chemo's more crowded, Dave's like, we don't want to ski that weekend anyway. So those weeks anyway. So we're going to put those and get some return on our investment. So this past weekend, we finally have it decorated just right. And we invited our realtor over to see it. And it was very gratifying to see her jaw drop as she walked in, because I think it turned out far nicer than she expected. And she said, Dave, if you'd like to do this all over Vermont, you could. But Dave really just wants to sit back, dream about building the log cabin piece, and go skiing while they're still skiing this season of 2024. So that's how we built our cabin in Vermont. So if you're thinking about doing a project like ours or purchasing real estate anywhere in New England, please reach out, because I would love to help you. And be sure to subscribe. And if you have any questions or thoughts, leave it in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.